Roy Cohn's life shines a light on the darkest parts of the American psyche.
He's this bridge between legitimate and illegitimate.
He was like a caged animal.
Don't settle, don't apologize, attack.
His contempt was so evident on his face, you knew you were in the presence of evil.
And that was a preview of the new documentary, Where's My Roy Cohn? The film looks at his legacy from his time as an aide to Joseph McCarthy through his mentoring of Donald Trump. George Packer wrote about Cohn for The Atlantic in a piece called The Mafia Style in American Politics. He writes, quote, Roy Cohn connects the McCarthy era to the age of Trump across more than half a century. And George Packer joins me now to discuss it. George, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us.
It's good to be with you.
Can you give us some more background on who Roy Cohn was?
He was a wunderkind lawyer in New York, brilliant, graduated from Columbia Law School at the age of like 20 or 21, and immediately made a name for himself prosecuting Julius and Ethel Rosenberg for passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union, and succeeded in getting guilty convictions, and the Rosenbergs were electrocuted, and Cohn became known as a communist hunter and came to the attention of Senator Joe McCarthy, who hired him as his chief counsel on his subcommittee on investigations, which was looking into communism in the U.S. government. And so Cohn, still in his earlier mid-20s, became notorious as a lawyer who was willing to go after anyone and to use pretty much any tactics in order to pin the charge of communism and to destroy people's lives, which he did.
And yet, despite this notoriety, or perhaps because of it, he escaped McCarthy's downfall and went on to somehow get into Donald Trump's orbit. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was about a 15-year gap there, but he left Washington after McCarthy went down in the Army McCarthy hearings, in the famous moment when the Army's counsel, Joseph Welch, said, "Have you no sense of decency, sir, at long last?" That was the end of McCarthy, but it was only the beginning of Roy Cohn, who became a famous New York lawyer, again, known for doing anything for his clients, going up to the edge of the law and often crossing the law, and yet prosecutors were never able to get a conviction on him, even though he was tried several times. So in the early 70s, he was at a nightclub in New York, and a young real estate developer named Donald Trump approached him and said, "I've heard about you. I hear you're like me. You're kind of crazy. Well, I'm being sued by the federal government for racist housing practices, and my lawyers are telling me to settle. Can I come see you?" Cohn said, "Sure," and recognized, I think, a potential protege. So Trump hired Cohn to defend him. And Cohn taught Trump how to handle a case like this. You don't settle. You don't meet them halfway. You attack, change the subject, throw meretricious accusations back at them, and finally wear them down until you've sort of won even while losing. And that's what happened in that case and in others.
And you sort of see that on display now. So are these tactics that you can directly, connect the dots between Trump and Cohn?
Trump has often referred to Cohn as his mentor, a guy he learned how to fight from. And apparently, during a key moment 2 years ago when Trump had just fired James Comey and was furious that Jeff Sessions had recused himself from the Russia investigation, he said in the Oval Office, "Where's my Roy Cohn? Where is the lawyer who's going to do anything to protect me?" Because it seemed that the people around him were not so ferocious and so loyal that they would do anything for him. Trump wanted a Roy Cohn to be his man. And in the years since, you could say there have been some Roy Cohns. Rudy Giuliani seems to be acting a bit like a Roy Cohn for Donald Trump. But it's interesting that Cohn eventually met his downfall just as McCarthy did.
Well, you write, quote, "Many things that once kept mafia politics in check pose no threat to Trump." Why is that?
Because it's a different time. In the 1950s, Joseph Welch could say, "Have you no sense of decency?" And there was a critical mass of Americans who were seeing TV for the first time and seeing McCarthy's tactics on TV and were repelled by it. and from Joseph Welch to turn on McCarthy. Well, now TV is Trump's friend. We all know who he is. He's out there saying it every day. There's no mystery. And there's just no way in which there's going to be a moment where someone who has the ability to command a sort of moral power over the American people is going to be able to call him on it. We don't live in that time anymore. We're divided, and people are entrenched in their views.
So there will be no sense of decency moment here. Do you think there is something maybe a little different about this moment with the impeachment inquiry going forward, or do you not necessarily see a distinction?
Well, I partly wrote the piece because I felt that we might be approaching a moment where, like McCarthy and like Cohn, Donald Trump might finally be unable to outrun the facts. It was the facts that brought McCarthy down. It was the facts that got Roy Cohn disbarred, and very soon after that he died, probably of AIDS. And it seems to be the facts that are now beginning to corner Donald Trump. And even though we've begun to feel that we live in an age in which facts no longer matter because Americans don't accept one another's facts, it does seem as if this time there's a limit. And if so, it tells you that just as there's an eternal recurrence of this mafia type, this killer political type from McCarthy to Cohn to Trump, there may also be a recurrence of institutions and of voices that can actually hold it in check. I don't know that, though. We don't know.
And this type that you say Americans have a soft spot for, we'll see how far that soft spot goes. George Packer, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.